you doing? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm hearing you good. Just doing my little DJ magic here.
Yeah, take your time.
No, how you doing, Mike? So long time no see, no speak, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah,
Um,
you too. You're looking good.
likewise. Welcome to the Raw Stone episode 4 with you as our guest. Very excited to speak to you today. We were just listening to Mucha Policía, Poca Diversión from Escorbuto from their album Schizophrenia. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later on, but I want to go back to you and, kind of give some context to any of the viewers. Me and Mike know each other from Gainesville, Florida, where you are at right now, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Very much. Yep.
That's awesome. Can you want to tell us a little bit about how you're doing, what's going on over there, and then we can talk about. I'll ask you some other questions about Florida, Gainesville.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, as far as the pandemic is going, I'm doing okay. My wife and I are fortunate enough to work from home, and so we've just been trying to isolate as much as possible and, limit going out in public and being safe when we do. I mean, it's been pretty uneventful, I guess, which is good. And in Florida, I think we're super susceptible to seeing things that are appearing fine and uneventful as like, safety or whatever, but it might not really be that. So, we'll see what people do throughout the summer as the students are coming back and as people are, getting fed up with wearing masks or whatever. But like overall in Alachua County, it's been pretty okay. Not a ton of cases or deaths. So, we got that sense of security going on, I guess.
And so people are being cooperative and following social distancing.
I mean, now that the original lockdown order ended, like at the beginning of May, there's been more people not following it as closely. The grocery stores aren't limiting the people inside anymore, so that's kind of loosened up a little bit. And then there have been a lot of students returning, or at least returning to the streets. So like the midtown bars and restaurants are not set up very distant friendly, or like if they do have distanted tables, they're tables that seat 10 to 12 people anyway. So there's still like these huge clusters of people in the midtown bars close to campus. But a lot of other restaurants are trying to, really limit their seating and keep it outside. So the city has closed a few of the streets and closed a few parking lots to like expand the area where a restaurant can set up their outdoor seating.
Yeah,
So they've done a little bit of that, but so it's kind of a mixed bag of people
yeah,
continuing to follow the orders and not.
yeah. Some people trying to innovate, other people's just don't. Yeah, it makes sense. Oh, over here, I feel like people are still, in most cases, following social distancing, but you don't. There's a lot of people who don't. I'm kind of having more trouble just being as careful. I'm still being careful, but as careful because as time goes on, I'm just like losing that focus to be being as clean. Still
Yeah.
being as clean as I remember, but not as like I've changed in habits. So anyway, I want to kind of take us back to the past and remind us of where we met. And if I'm not mistaken, it was in a level one creative writing class with Paget Powell. Is that the first class? Because we took multiple classes together, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I bet. Yeah. Do you remember what other teachers we would have had together? I definitely remember the Powell
And
classes with
David
you.
Levitt,
It might
didn't
have
you
been
take
him.
that class together with Levitt?
Okay.
Yeah. So it
Yeah.
was them two, definitely. And so, yeah, I just kind of wanted to bring that up. Have you been keeping up with any of the old writing professors stuff that maybe you want to talk about?
Yeah. Powell's stuff was always, I think, my favorite out of the faculty that we had, which was Paget Powell and David Levitt and Jill Cement and Mary
We
Robeson.
had Hoffman.
And
Hoffman was there, but in doing poetry and translation too.
right. I never took a major faculty poetry class. I had a grad student one time, but yeah, I kept up with Powell's stuff. He while we were there, his book the interrogative mood came out, and that was kind of a little bit of a sensation for whatever a book that's made up of entirely questions can be. Like that was a nice kind of alternative book hit for him, I think.
Yeah,
It's a great book.
yeah.
And then he wrote one called You and Me that came out a few years later. That's kind of like a Waiting for Godot kind of style dialogue between two weirdos that I think is a great book. It's a really, really funny
It
book.
is. It's so
And
funny.
then,
It's so funny. I have it too. I've been rereading some of his stuff in the past year, really, like with the interrogative mood last year I reread it, and then recently I did You and Me again. Did you check
yeah,
out his story collection that came out? What is it? Cries for Help.
I did. Yeah, I've got that one. I read a lot of those here and there when they were published, so I haven't like read through the whole entire book as a book yet. But I do have that one. I went to go see him read from it in St. Augustine
Oh,
for a book
really?
festival. That was yeah.
Fuck yeah, that's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, the first story in the collection blew my mind. Like, it's such a fucking weird story, and it's like really impacting. It catches you out of nowhere. Like, and it's weird because it's surreal and you're not sure what's happening, but you have an idea of it. So at least that keeps me going through it. I'm like, I think I know what's going on. But at the end it has this really beautiful moment where I don't know, it's just two friends talking about how fucked everything is.
Yeah.
And it's just like this really funny moment that I love Power for that reason. Um, what else
Yeah.
is going on down in the South over in Gainesville? If you want to share with our viewers here on the Raw Stone,
Literary wise, or
or are you just there? Are you
anything?
up to date? Are you involved, or are you not, like, with what's going on in Gainesville right now? Because I used to live over there and see a little bit, but it's been years since I've been
Yeah.
over there.
No, I mean, I don't think I'm really super plugged in into much. I still know a few of the bands that were around when I lived here last. So like I moved away in 2012 and lived in Boston, while you were there for a few years, and then went to Tampa for a few years. So then and then I came back here in 2019. So like a few of the bands are still around, and those people in new bands. So like I know a few people, but as far as like a writing scene going, I don't really know much of what's going on. A lot of there's no bookstores left in town besides like a Books a Million. Um, yeah, Wild Iris Books was the last bookstore that was around when we left. The lesbian kind of
Yeah,
feminist
yeah,
collective
yeah.
bookstore, and that closed in the meantime. The Civic Media Center is doing great. Like they've kind of continued to
They're
grow,
still
and
around. Word up
they're still
to the
around.
committee of
They
CBC.
opened up a
CBC.
they opened up a coffee. They're doing great. I mean, that area has kept expanding around downtown, and they've got a coffee shop and a bar in there now, and their courtyard out back is looking really nice. So, they've really made the most of what they've been doing.
So that's good. I mean, like, it seems like the pickings are slim, but what you got is good though. CBC is doing strong. Um,
Yeah, the Civic Media Center
yeah,
for
Pacific Media.
those. I don't know, like when we were here, the MFA program at UF would do readings at Volta at coffee shops, and I don't think they're doing them in public anywhere that I know. I know I asked Paget about that, and he said that it was happening somewhere else, but I never hear about it or see it going on. So that's kind of quieted down, and that was I think a very important thing for me was to see them, out there reading every month, and that was,
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
but I don't know where that's going.
The UF MFA at UF, they were keeping things good with yeah, I would go. They would have what was the name of that bookshop that was behind. Oh, I've been so long since I've been to Gainesville. I don't know any of the streets, so I don't.
I know what it's called. It's Gehrings.
Yeah, yeah, Gary. So that was gone.
Yeah, that closed in like 2008, 9. That was gone. That's why they moved to Volta.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I remember the change. I remember the shift. I was still around during when Volta opened. Yeah, I remember. Okay. So, what else are you reading right now? If you don't mind sharing with us.
Yeah. Most recently, it's been Willa Cather books, the American author in the 1800s and early 1900s. And she's been amazing. Have you ever read any of her? She's mostly a novelist.
I think that I've seen her name more in the collections
Mhm.
in the 201 classes. So I'm trying to
Mhm.
kind of remember the name off like, but I can't drop a name at the moment. But
She wrote
I
like
know you
My
speaking.
Antonia. Yeah. I really loved her stuff. I read a little bit of her in college in a couple different classes and liked it a lot. And then I reread one of her novels, A Song with the Lark, last year, and it was, even better than I remembered. So I tried to read some of the ones that I had on the shelf that I hadn't read yet, because she's easy to pick up at a friend's of the library sale or whatever, because she's public domain and there's a bajillion editions of every single thing she's ever written. So like, there are paperback copies in dumpsters everywhere, and I had some on my shelf and didn't, the library was shut down for a while, so I wasn't getting new stuff. So I tried to go through and read some of her stuff that I hadn't gotten to, and it's all so phenomenal. Very, very glad that I've gotten around to read more of it.
Yes. Okay, so something to check out, Willa Cather. And how about in terms of music? What have you been listening to?
This week it's been a lot of like 90s adult alternative, rock, like Goo Goo Dolls and Collective Soul, and kind of like the cheesier lineage of like Paul Westerberg and like replacements stuff. It's making me feel good. My mom used to listen to that stuff, so it just reminds me of being in the car or the house with her to hear a Collective Soul. Do you remember that band, or like the
Yeah,
Wallflowers,
yeah,
or
definitely remember
Matchbox
Collective
20? Like,
Soul and these alternative
yeah.
it gets referred to. Yeah, I'm trying to bring us to the next point in my list, in my outline here is your writing, your recent writing, and it's poetry, but it's poetry focused on a certain subject, which is music, and so the reviews in haiku form, right? And we actually have some of these haikus. While they're different, because what we got published, for those of you who might not be aware, we recently published some of Ostrov's haikus, and the first out of his series, we're going to come out with another one of pamphlets. They're poetic pamphlets with two or three poets, and 80% of the proceeds will go to Almuerzos Solidarios. There's more details on our website if you want to check out. And they're just feeding homeless people and poor people and down in Puerto Rico. So basically, during this whole pandemic, anything that we sell, 80% of this stuff, 20% of our recent issue, that's going towards that foundation. I think in the past month or 2 or 3 months, we've been able to send them close to $200. So I'm really happy about that. $40 in the past month came from just sales stuff. So that's really cool. And here, what I wanted to see if you could speak about is that, like, your reviews are focused obviously about the album. You choose an album and you have a haiku, and it's poignant, and so it's real deep. So it's like a real precise review. And but here, these are haikus, but they're not about music. And so I'm wondering if you want to speak about maybe the other haiku stuff you do. Do you have another collection that you're working on? Is there going to be another blog uh, just for these non-music reviews haikus?
I mean, that's a good question. Haiku, I mean, most of my practice is not in poetry. Like we were talking about the fiction classes that we took together, and that's what the rest of my studies have been in is fiction, and that's where most of my publications are and what I like to write the most. But after a while, I just kind of stopped being able to finish stories, and so I wanted something else to make sure that I kept writing anything. So um, I came back to haikus, which are something that I've done on and off, throughout my life whenever I'm stumped or have like only a tiny bit amount of time to write. The two things I like to do are to either write haikus or to just make a list of like made up people's names and just make up weird combinations of first and last names. Because it just is an easy way to get something interesting on the page, I think. But the haikus I came back to because it was something that I could do in a short amount of time and something that I could keep doing consistently throughout the year and something that I didn't have a lot of like self-imposed standards already built up about. So like, if I know I could tell very easily when a story is boring and bad and get angry about myself for not making it better. But for like poetry, I don't really have that kind of censor yet. So I thought that was a nice thing to be free of for a while. But the difference between like the haiku in your issue and the haiku on the website, I don't think they're coming from different places really. The review conceit of the website, which is haiku.reviews, is kind of, very flimsy. I'm not trying to necessarily give anybody a recommendation on whether they should listen to the album or not, or like describe the sound of it or anything like that. I just the pairings come a lot from just the pairings between the haiku and the album are just kind of in it's like an idea that I would get from the album cover or from like the mood of the music a little bit, or sometimes the lyrical focus of parts of the album. If I could tell the album has a certain like interest or a certain point that they're trying to make, then I think about that subject as well and write my own thing off that idea. But so it's just kind of like because they come out every week and because one haiku is about a brand new album from that Friday and one haiku is about an older album that I get a lot more freedom in choosing. It's just kind of like a calendar. I think of it like, where I could express like a mood of that week along with something that happened in culture that week, which is the album. And it's just kind of a way of keeping track of stuff. So like as the year has changed, my digestion of the albums is changing and my reviews or the haikus about them also reflect that kind of stuff. So it's just as much about the context on the Friday that the album is released than it is the album itself. So as the pandemic was happening, some of those ideas coming into the haikus, and you know that's kind of where the series that you published came from. We're from a couple weeks in March and April.
I like that. So like one could say that while they're in the realm of the haiku, they're certainly more expressive than the traditional form tends to be, which
I would say so. I don't have a lot of frame of reference for what like a traditional haiku needs to be other than the syllable count, which I make fun of. There's a syllabometer on my website. Like I really try and play up the fact that I'm counting syllables because I think it's a silly and ridiculous part of the form. And I like anything that makes me count on my fingers all the time as I'm walking
it's
around.
fun.
Yeah. But like it's a form that you learn about when you're a kid because it's short and it teaches you about form and like it's an easy thing to teach in school, but you don't get a lot of context for what it might mean in Eastern poetry, and you don't get a lot of ideas about like what modern haiku might be like. It's not like it doesn't get followed up on in classes very much. So like I don't really have an idea about it, and I've been debating about whether I want to go into like studying the form more or whether I want to again like kind of leave those expectations off myself and just
I
be
got a recommendation for you. Sorry for the interruption.
yeah.
So
No, please.
just in case, right? Because we're bringing it. This right here is this shit, right? It's called the Haiku Anthology. I don't know if it looks right. And so yeah, over 800 of the best, and this is all English language. So this is
Okay.
just that, but it talks a lot about the tradition and then the breaking with tradition. And I
Yeah.
would say, you could find new stuff in there, and a lot of the points you're making, you see in that work. So if you can check that out, it's called, the Haiku Anthology, Cor van den Heuvel. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name correctly. Um, but yeah, yo, that thanks for speaking
Thank
on
you.
that. And on that note, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind sharing some haikus with us that you got.
Yeah, absolutely. I could read the couple that are in the Sad Vacation issue, and
And I think you also said you wanted to read a little bit of other stuff too. You said some fiction too.
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, just please entertain us here with some of your lit.
All right. Well, maybe I'll start with one of the things that was published yesterday, or that I published on the haiku.reviews yesterday. Yeah, I mean, let's see how entertaining a haiku can be. Can you sit on the edge of your seat for about 1.5 seconds? Can you catch me including an extra syllable where I may have miscounted? I don't think I've fudged the numbers yet, but if you guys could tell. All right, so this one is with Rugrats and my grandparents gone, when will I hear Yiddish again? End of haiku. I was thinking about just that I don't hear Yiddish anymore in life. Tommy's grandparents on the Rugrats, they spoke it in those in the Passover episodes and the Hanukkah episodes, and like there's just that's not a something, and I never knew that that was the main source of Yiddish outside of my dad's side of the family until I was thinking about that. So I always think it's interesting to bring in a very like an unexpected kind of pop culture thing as well, like Rugrats and a haiku,
Yeah, I
especially
mean,
in regards to
right.
its
And
yeah.
in this case, it works on multiple levels because there's the obvious pop culture reference, but then there's the actual literal meaning of the word, and so it kind of plays. It works interestingly there. Yeah.
All right, let's go for another one. That one was posted in conjunction with an album called Jewish Religious Songs by the Asaph Vocal Quartet, which it just has a really cool like mid-century. Um, it's the guy the album art is what I'm talking about. It's the guy who did a lot of the artwork for Blue Note Records, like that famous jazz label throughout the 50s and 60s. So, like all those really interesting kind of color blocks and fonts and stuff he was bringing to it, but it's for like a cantor rabbi singing record. So I wanted to feature that artwork. All right, here's another one. Born at Pepita, but paid in pumpkins. Of course, I thought wages were fate. End of haiku. That was about the U.S. Girls album from this year. Um, Born a Pepita, but paid in pumpkins. Of course, I thought wages were fate. And I was just trying to think about like just how convinced people are that their wage is their worth, and like how much you suppress to make it. So like that idea that you're born a pumpkin seed and paid in pumpkins, like what you're supposed to grow into, then that kind of just feels so inevitable that like that's all the future that there is. I thought that I like that idea and trying to think of like, what you're taught is inevitable and mandatory.
Yeah, there's a good melody too.
Uh,
There's a good rhythm with the word choice in that one as well. It goes pa 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 pa.
thank you. Uh, I hoped that was something that I could carry over from the fiction as well, because like, I can never write super long fiction or super like descriptive fiction. I just thought that my fiction was good for like little bursts of emotion and interesting language. So, maybe that's more suited to poetry in the first place. But that's kind of what I hope the haikus do too, is that whether I guess I envision most people like reading them to themselves at their computer, because I don't, do a lot of public readings of them. And They're so short that I couldn't imagine people wanting to like hear somebody else read them. I just think of it as like an internal monologue that I hope that as you're reading it to yourself, you feel like, you know, your tongue, moving in an interesting way, or like that a quick pairing of words that's unexpected, or like, different than you might have seen. So like I like that kind of flash, new utterance kind of aspect of it. Here, I could do another
How
one.
about one from the commission,
Um,
one from the pamphlet?
you,
One from the pamphlet,
let's do
and we'll
it.
go into some fiction because you did bring up your little bit of fiction. So I think it's a good segue to take to
Sure.
follow.
Let's do this one. To worry about death is to die twice, but we gotta kill some time.
Yeah, that one's good. You know, that one they're really impactful. Actually, they're really strong. And I think
Thank you.
people, you check it out. We're coming out with a second version, so you can get two for $5. If you only want one, I'll sell it for you for $3. You know, I did have it at 5, but if anybody actually hit me up about it, I sold a couple, but they bought a bunch of other stuff too, so it wasn't just that. But we're gonna have another issue soon, so there'll be 2 for $5. 80% of them go to Almuerzos Solidarios. And so let's continue with that bit of fiction. What you got? You want to talk about it? Introduce it, please.
Yeah, you got just it's a story that I wrote a few years ago that is still trying to place somewhere, I hope. And um, it was it's called Steamer Rose Standish, like the name of a ship, a steamer ship, and it was a name, like again, just the idea of like a phrase sticking out and meaning something. I just saw that name of a ship at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston the last time that I was there, and uh, the Rose Standish just stood out to me. And the story of the ship is included in the story a little bit, so it kind of got me on this idea of shipwrecks, because the steamer Rose Standish did not live very long. It suffered a tragic death. So, all right, let's go for it. I was raised in the Midwest, but I've always been fascinated by shipwrecks. When my family visited East Coast cities on vacation, we would inevitably wind up in an art museum where I would plant myself in front of tempestuous scenes by Bradford, Homer, Copley, and feel terrified, small, as if I was looking at something as hard to fathom as extraterrestrials. As a teenager, I painted a series in that shipwreck style, depicting UFOs crashing into baseball stadiums and soy fields. Now I work as a canvasser for a few women's rights nonprofits in Oklahoma City. I walk door to door all summer, angling for support to pass legislation in the fall. I sweat through my closet by midweek. Too much of my paycheck goes to laundry. My canvassing partner is Neil, gorgeous and mostly Cherokee. We're supposed to look presentable, of course, since we want voters to think that we're legitimate enough to steward their signatures and their addresses, but many of the male canvassers still walk around shirtless to beat the heat. However, Neil does not do that, and I am grateful that he is shirted and presentable. Every morning we get a spiel from our supervisors because every morning we have new employees. The turnover rate is as high as the temperature. We are to talk to men who grant more rights to guns than to women. We are to talk to women who would govern their city by the same law as besieged Jerusalem. We are not telling them that they are wrong, even. No, we are not treading on them. We are only asking them for the opportunity to consider our legislation for the possibility of being voted on. The way that Neil breaks it down is that we're either talking to people who love their mothers, sisters, daughters, coworkers, classmates, teachers, or we're talking to people who don't see them as people. I just think that people, anybody, can be charmed into defending any dinghy of delusion that they know, if that's all they know. Which is why I love when people, when we ask them for their signatures, instead of talking about politics, they tell us UFO stories, which are not that uncommon in the Midwest. Today, a middle-aged man with swollen, sunburned arms tells us that he won't sign his name for any government official. We tell him that we're not government officials. He continues anyway. He says they've been penning me in. They've been tracking me since I was taken last year. He said, "Do you know about this?" We ask him why would we know about this. He says that it doesn't matter. Aboard their ship, he saw blueprints for a full-scale attack of almond-eyed aliens. He said he wanted to tear up their plans, but the thing was, he couldn't move his arms. I'm sure they had backup plans, Neil said. I could tell you this, the man said. The coast will be the first to go. They'll work their way inward, squeezing us, panning us, from the sides and from above. Since it happened, I still feel paralyzed sometimes, like I should be out ringing the alarm, but I only want to stay inside. I can't tell who's stopping me from doing what since it happened. The man sounded like a prophet describing a calling that wasn't really communicated right, by either angels or aliens with phones either too old or too new to sync with his. And as we crossed the man's lawn to his neighbor's door, Neil said to me that the country is done. It's a ship, it's sinking, and that he could see the people already underwater, but he can't save them, and that he has no idea when the rest of the ship is going to go down. I tell him, I think you're in the same position as that guy. You just disagree on who's drowning and who's steering. He nodded and sweated and rolled up his sleeves around his shoulders to minimize his farmer's tan. Most of the male canvassers don't listen as well as Neil. And I thought of Neil's rope-tight brown arms and the guy's swollen red arms and mine that are at least well-rounded in the shoulders, and which one of us out of the three could haul the most people back to the beach. But not all shipwrecks are alike, and I do not think this country is one big sinking ship, but a composite of them all. For instance, in these moments, walking across those yards, knowing my bra is showing through my sweat-drenched white shirt, feeling simultaneously repulsive and watched, having to choose between that and dark shirt heat stroke, trying to convince voters to respect my body as it begs me to shelter it. I feel like a passenger aboard the Rose Standish, a passenger ship that in 1884 sunk in the Boston harbor in just 6 minutes while also being completely on fire. All June is hot, and there are fires everywhere. It feels like the city is stuffed in a canvas sack. It looks like the sun is rusting over in a pool of its own sweat. Heat shields to full strength divert power from the engines. I stand, silent, in a sweated-through subhuman's t-shirt beside a washer and a dryer that have more of my money than the bank, and I count my quarters. By late July, it seems unlikely that we'll be able to gather enough signatures to place anything worthwhile on the fall ballot, but we doubled down our effort anyway, and I'm walking through town for about 11 hours per day. I need new shoes, but I have to allot too much money to laundry, the performance of which also cuts into my sleep time. I eat dinner waiting for laundry machines to buzz. I tell my mom that in the course of pursuing better healthcare and work environments, I am working in the least humane conditions, and I am unable to take the time to take care of my health. She says that that's what raising a family is like, and that this is good practice, and I stop telling her most things that I am unsatisfied with. I wonder if there's something wrong with me for not being invigorated by this work. I think about the UFO stories I've heard all summer. Most of them involve people being taken in their sleep, and the sensation of being frozen and unable to react to alien advances. Skeptics attribute this to a chemical in your brain that your brain produces to keep you still during sleep and keep you from rolling off your bed. I must have exhausted that chemical because I feel like I have not been able to slow down for months, and in my sleep I feel the sensation of walking, of trying to hammer an initiative into a ballot with each stroke of midnight, with each dryer cycle buzzer. I dump a pile of clean laundry on my couch, never to be properly put away, and I think of the Edmund Fitzgerald, one of the largest ships to ever sail the Great Lakes, which went down with all hands in the middle of a night during a winter storm in 1975. Other UFO stories feature great reveals. Family and friends turn out to be alien agents. Babies conceived of abusive husbands are actually specially selected alien hybrids. Pets communicate with aliens in between visits. I can see the appeal of that side. If everything you know was the set dressing of alien drama, then your past and your future are both intergalactically meaningful and outside of your control. What a weight off. The stories that unsettle me the most are not when its loved ones revealed to be aliens, but trusted professionals like the abductee's doctor or boss or city council person, or in the case of one man we talked to outside of a Walmart, his immigration attorney. I feel more defenseless against that narrative. So much of my faith is in strangers. which is heartening until I think of the wave released by the shelf of their stability collapsing. From the pile of clean laundry, I take out the shirt and underwear I'll wear tomorrow, put them on, and get into bed. I try and shrink the size of the waves crashing in my mind, smaller and smaller, until the surface is calm enough to sleep upon. Then I start to picture another Great Lakes shipping disaster, more upsetting than the Edmund Fitzgerald. It's the 1907 wreck of the Cypress, which, while hauling iron ore to Buffalo, sank in Lake Superior during a casual October storm that disturbed no other ships. One of my high school paintings portrayed a starship named the USS Invisible Hand, nose-diving into the shopping center across the street from my house. The backstory that I invented was that in the year 3003, this ship was the crown jewel of its military fleet, but it had been commandeered by time-traveling anarcho-activists who flew it back in time to 1989, Reagan's last day in office, and destroyed it. I titled the piece Bitch Slap. Those fleeing the wreckage were mostly the football players and Sunday school teachers at my school. We're off on Labor Day, which is a contested issue because our targeted voters will also be off and therefore reachable at home. Many canvassers volunteer to work the phones, but I take advantage of my leave and go downtown to sit in various spots of air conditioning. First a coffee shop, then a stationery store, then a gallery. In the gallery, which it seems is between exhibits, two skinny men bend over a folding table and point at a set of blueprints. I open the door and ask if the exhibition will be ready for tonight, the only time that I would be able to make it. It will be. I will be back. I step back onto the sidewalk, but I misjudge the distance, and my left kneecap dislocates. It snaps to the outside of my leg, and I crumble. Because it was Labor Day, my regular doctor was out of the office. I was not on the job, so I will not be eligible for compensation. One of the men in the gallery drove me to the nearest emergency room, and I told him this. I asked him how the fuck am I going to be able to afford recovery? And he told me that my knee looked like an alien limb, stretched out and mannerist. Neil relieved the gallery guy, and he drove me home from the hospital. I should have been at the call center, I said. He nods and sweats. He is shaken up. To him, I must be one of the people underwater now, and he's judging whether I'm worth saving. His hands clench the wheel the whole time, besides the few seconds it takes him to switch the Yola Tango CD that ended and put on a Paul Simon CD. At home, it's hard to sleep because I'm in pain and full of residual adrenaline, and I've been sitting all day already. The floor fan blows lukewarm air on me, and I just sit. I'm cosplaying the sinking of the USS Arizona or any ship bombed in the shallows, which, once wrecked, has nowhere to go. It seems like there is dignity in drifting down into the abyss, but here, superstructures tower over an unsalvageable foundation. The next morning, my supervisor, Mabel, brings over to my apartment a call list and 2 burner cell phones. We work until lunch without talking to each other, which I appreciate. She heads out to pick up lunch, and I turn on the TV. One day into recovery, and I already hate watching TV. I hate being forced to sit. And I already dread walking again, being forced to do so with so much anxious consideration for my knee. There are so many things I wish I could have stopped, but now there is just frozenness. In 1956, the SS Andrea Doria, an Italian liner, was approaching its destination in New York when it collided with an outgoing cruiser. And over the next dozen hours, the ship slowly sank, broadcast live on television. The site has become a popular and challenging diving destination, and soon more people will have died exploring the wreckage than in the original wreck. When Mabel comes back with lunch, we eat cold orzo salads and fruit cup in the din of the floor fan. Is the forecast looking any better for the ballot, I ask. If it doesn't happen this year, it'll happen next year or sometime, she says. Don't you feel helpless, failing year after year? Oh, I don't think there are a bunch of different fails, at least not anymore. I think of it like one big fail, and I'm used to it by now. It's easier when you don't have to stop and start as much. I miss the UFO stories, and I ask Mabel if she's heard any good ones. I haven't heard a lot lately, but one from when I first started always stays with me, she says. I was a woman about your age, which was also my age at the time, and she started telling me that she didn't care about women's rights because she wasn't a woman. I asked her what she was then. This is before trans awareness as much. And she said that she was an alien, but that she had been abducted by humans and forced to live on Earth as a woman. And I thought that maybe she was trying to tell me in code that she had been kidnapped or something, but she went on like she didn't even need me to listen. And I've been here 30 years, she said, since I was a baby girl, and I've lived every day as if I was a woman, and I've been treated every day as if I was a woman, and I've loved everybody I've ever met as if I was a woman, but deep down, I know that I'm not what they've been saying I am. And I want to go home so bad. But what if there's nowhere to go back to? And what if the other aliens don't love me? And what if I'm bad at loving the other aliens? And Mabel continued that she was so curious about what that woman's deal actually was. And Mabel was afraid that she had just learned it. Mabel wondered if anything she could ever do could ever help that. I didn't get her signature, Mabel said. I went back to the house every summer until I started working in the office as a supervisor, but it was never her who answered the door. I've never heard one like that, is all I could think to say. You've been around, Mabel says. What would you have done if she'd said that to you? I think about it. We each break through the layer of blueberries in our fruit cups and we get down to the grapes. And my answer is in the back corner of my closet. It's the series of UFO shipwreck paintings I did years ago. And I want to tell Mabel to go get them for me so that we could look at the last one in the series. It's the one that depicts a heart-shaped, rust-colored ship called the Rose Can't Standish, plummeting into Broken Bow Lake, sending its massive wake onto the banks of Oklahoma and Texas, upturning herds of pickups and cattle, undertow sucking it all vengefully back into the ship's gravity.
Uh,
End of
that
story.
was great, Mike. Thank you so much. Yeah, a little bleak, but it got a little magical there at the end. I appreciate a lot of commentary. I saw some activist burnout. I saw some boomer gaslighting, culture wars. So yeah, a lot of very contemporary stuff. A lot of very funny parts. So thank you so much for that. That was great.
Thank
And
you.
now I think it's going to get really fun. And I just want to share with any viewers what we're going to do next is Mike sent me a selection of music that he would be into doing a freestyle haiku. So this is not something he's written yet. And I've picked one of them, and he doesn't know which one. And I'm going to play it, and he has to listen to it, recognize it, and do a freestyle. So what about like I guess a minute of the song? You think?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see me doing a lot of counting. But yeah, I could do that.
Okay, so we're gonna do that, and Dan, we're gonna share some memes and kind of start closing up. So ready? Here we go. I'm not gonna tell you. You got a minute to listen. You can think about it and do a freestyle. This is why you come to the Raw Stone freestyle haiku reviews. Nowhere else.
I hope not.
Hopefully, there's not a fucking commercial.
So it's one of the YouTube ones.
Oh. Okay, so that's been a minute, Mike.
Sure. I mean, so part of I knew what song that was. It's a song called "We Walk the Night" by the Scat Brothers, right? And so, like, I guess knowing what was to come influenced my writing a little bit more than just the ominous chuckling that we heard in that minute. All right, so I've got like hydrogen in water, fearing oxygen, we burst nights apart.
Yeah, that's fucking fire, bro. Some dope shit. Keeping it with the themes of, why kill us for a fucking living? Fuck the police.
Yeah.
God damn it. Um, anyway, you sent me some. Oh, you already? Yeah, are you working on any other stuff beyond the haikus and the stories that you want to share with the viewers?
For now, it's really that. I'd love for everybody to check out Haiku Reviews. There's stuff posting every Friday, and it's good music recommendations. I would never post an album that's not fun or whatever to listen to. So even if you're not learning a ton about the album, it's just a good place for good music, new releases, and an interesting 5 seconds of poetry that it takes to read. So uh, follow that.
Do you want to do another freestyle for? Because I had an idea
Yeah,
of trying to get you to do a freestyle of a song that I of an album I chose, but I can't. I'm not going to tell you
yeah.
anything about it, and you just got to listen to it. And we'll kind of do 1 minute as well because we're kind of running out of time. I don't want to have this
Throw it at me.
1 minute, or do you want 2 minutes? You tell me. You call it.
Let's split the difference. Let's do 90 seconds.
90 seconds, a minute and a half. Okay, here we go. A minute and a half. Commercial.
The soap you shower with?
Fucking bullshit.
Because I'll let you in a.
Soap is important.
Can you hear it all right?
A little bit. Okay.
We'll give it a few minutes because you got to get into it. Granted, this is something you've never heard, or at least the first song. Okay, Mike. I think that was enough time.
Okay. Let me just- All right. So, that was blurry coming through, but let's see what we got. We got we're taught that salsa and ska are somehow separate, but neither lets stiff neck. That's as far as I got. I couldn't quite make that last line make sense, but that's what I
Okay.
thought I was hearing. I thought I was.
So this was a haiku about the Escorbuto album, classic 1980s Spanish punk rock band. No salsa this time, though. We do play salsa a lot, but I don't have an explicit "fuck the police" salsa record, or at least I haven't. If I have that song in there, I haven't found it in my records, and uh, I'm
Hmm.
just kind of keeping with the social theme. But yeah, that was cool, man. Um, on the spot haikus. And let me see. The last thing we got some memes to share. This is our meme moment of the episode. I'm going to share one that Mike sent me and then one that I got that's kind of related to it and other stuff. So here we go. We got Woody Guthrie and then punks. They're using the cat to outline, and then you get folk punk, right? So I found that one to be pretty funny. And here's mine, and I think you were mixing it up with ska and salsa. Here we got rap and punk, and I think I said this earlier in this show. Fuck the police. And back to me. Hello, everybody. And yeah, so that's kind of what I got for us today. So the last thing I'd like to give our guest an opportunity to do is any shout outs you want to give to anybody today on the Raw Stone.
Sure. A shout out to the Civic Media Center that we mentioned earlier, and all the people that have made that place.
I was saying CVC. Thank you for correcting me. I realized that later on.
So yeah, if you're ever in Gainesville, go there. It's a radical reading room and info shop and library and coffee house and hangout space and activist organizing space. And they played a big part in my education, and I'm glad that I got to volunteer there, and I met my wife through working for there, and it's just it's an amazing place. That was and the people who make it work all the time, they work really hard. So all those places that are in your town, keep them going and try and support them.
Sweet.
Not enough, right?
Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us today on episode 4 of the Raw Stone. I think we had a great conversation. We talked about poetry, about literature, stories, fiction, and music, and what's going on here in the States nowadays. And I'm really glad to see you again and talk to you and, get to publish your work. It's really fucking awesome to years later get to put out, the work of a former classmate. We were like, little chicks. Pollitos.
You were Andy Riverbed.
Yeah, I middle name, all that stuff. Yeah, big changes, but it's good to see you and good to talk to you, man. And I really appreciate you giving me this opportunity to put this out here. And we'll have a video about this soon, another episode of the Raw Stone. And hit up sadvacationpress.svpress.blogspot.com for details on any orders. And if you want to get a copy of Mike's poetry with us. And thanks again, Mike. I appreciate it. I'm going to go back to Escorbuto, and we're going to be closing up our episode of the Raw Stone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks for putting the issue out and for doing good things with the proceeds. I really appreciate it, and stay safe out there.
Oh, yeah, last thing, if anybody's watching from Brooklyn, south side of Prospect Park, go protest. This is going throughout the nation, Fuck the police. Get your signs out. That's where SV Press is going right after this. Right after this.
What's up, Brooklyn? This is what's up here. Whose streets, D? Our streets. Whose streets? Our streets. Shit up. Oh, what's up, bro? In Brooklyn, here we got the Manhattan Bridge. It's fucking shit up here. Whose street? Our streets. Showing you where we at. What?